You are listening to
The Shredcast.
No tendies, baby.
It's the health code for snowboarders.
Let's send it.
Welcome to the Shredcast, everyone. I have a really special episode today because we have Dan from Skateboard Strength and also Chase Oken from Chasing Performance kind of co-hosting this episode. We kind of just went into it and didn't really intro anything, so I just wanted to throw this little intro in there. If you don't already know, Dan from Skateboard Strength is a skateboarder who started at age 35, but he had been in the strength and conditioning realm for about 12-ish years, and then fell in love with his passion of snowboarding and realized this huge disconnect between a lot of older skateboarders that were just feeling beat down or people just really wanting to improve their performance, and they didn't have this connection into the strength and conditioning world. So he decided to be that connection after falling in love with the sport. So definitely enjoy this episode and get to know Dan and the skateboard strength a little bit better. And we talk a lot on snowboarding and skateboarding, strength and conditioning, and just strength conditioning as a whole. So definitely go ahead and listen to the rest of this episode.
Dan, what's up, man?
What's happening, buddy? Good to finally touch base, face to face at least.
Yeah, for sure.
We were just talking about the contrast of where we are at the moment, where you guys are in the middle of winter, and I'm just like sizzling over here in Sydney, Australia, and you guys are like taking in your evening, and we are literally just starting our days. It's pretty trippy sometimes,
That's crazy. Right? Yeah. Dude,
have you guys had a good snow season over there at least?
Oh God, no.
Really?
It's been terrible, at least where I am.
Really?
I would say it's been pretty, like, I would say average out here in Colorado. Last year we got fucking hammered. So like this year's like just hasn't been that, but it's not been a bad year, I would say. So
is there still some time left for you guys to just like get hammered with a bit of snow? Yeah.
Oh yeah, February and March are kind of I would say the best months.
I would agree.
And I love spring. I love spring. I think spring snowboarding is so slept on.
Yeah, it's the most fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, going out in like just short sleeve shirts and a beanie and
exactly.
That'd be sick. Bit of sunshine and nice snow. Yeah.
And it's super like slushy, so you can try new things and doesn't really hurt as bad when you eat it. So
you get wet, that's for sure, but it's give and take.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, there's always good the pros and cons, right? Yeah, we ski on nothing but ice over here in Australia. It's like it's terrible. It's so bad. Yeah, it's like I actually snowboarded for the first time in Japan, right?
Oh
in
shit!
Hakuba.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like it was like I'd never been to the snow before, and my buddies who had skied all their lives here in Australia were going over to Japan for a trip because they wanted to experience overseas snow. So I just jumped on board. But so literally the first time I started learning how to snowboard was in powder, like in Japan. So it was just so nice to be able to learn and not have consequences, because it was like we had some really epic days over there as well, where we just had amazing snowfall, and it was just so powdery. And if you fell, it was just like the worst thing you had to do was just go inside and sit by the fire a bit and get rid of all the like ice down your back and that. And then we came back to Australia and I had the bug because I just fell in love with it. And I was like, oh, let's go to Fredborough. I was like, dude, it's not the same. And I'm like, nah, let's go anyway. And I just developed this confidence like over in Japan that carried over for my first couple of runs in Australia. And I was just franging it down the mountain, and I messed up. And the realization of hitting ice as opposed to hitting powder, just like it like took the wind out of me, like mild concussion, and it was just like I was just ruined. And it was just like, where the fuck are we? I was like, that was way different.
Oh yeah.
It was so humbling. Such a reality check.
Cement and ice are similar. It's just on ice, you're on a snowboard, you're strapped in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just can't run it out.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, and it's just at least you slide a bit, right? The cement is just like you're not sliding, you're just scraping.
Yeah.
So
I can't even imagine. Yeah, I'm not a skateboarder. I've always wanted to learn, but now as I'm getting older, the fear of hitting cement just takes over, and I'm like, I can't do it.
It's the realization that hits a lot of people. That we had a lot of people start skateboarding in around the COVID time. And to be honest with you, that was me as well. Like I only started skateboarding around when we had the lockdowns COVID, because they were building a state-of-the-art skate park around the corner from me. And all we could do around COVID time was go and walk around the park. So I was seeing this thing get built. And when we kind of got let out, when the park got opened up, I'd always wanted to like learn how to ride a bowl. And I was just like in love with like the Dogtown guys and all that kind of stuff. And so I bought a skateboard and I went down. I was going at like 6 a.m. in the morning, so like no one could see me, and so I wouldn't get in anyone's way. And that's how it kind of all began. But the realization when you do, like, it's all fun and games, like you're learning and everything like that, but when you first hit really hard, it's a big wake up call that you're like, it's fun, but you really gotta be obsessed with it or love it to endure those times, because there's probably a lot of like skateboards in cupboards now from people that came to that realization post COVID and realized that, oh fuck, I forgot that when I do come off, it's it's a fucking wake up call. It's bad.
You still have that in even when you've been riding, like same with snowboarding. Like, knock on wood, I haven't had one of those yet this year, but I know every year I go down and I'm like, fuck this, I'm done with this shit. You know what I mean? Like, no more for me, but
Yeah.
I always come back, you always come back.
Yeah.
Do you guys have the mental battle in snowboarding, like trying to learn something for ages, and when it's just not coming through, and you have those days, then you get dusted as well, and then you have those days where you just question, like, why do I even do this? Like, I was supposed to. It happens to me. I was like, I was supposed to be having fun today, get out, have a skate, or go out and snowboard, and you come back just absolutely miserable, and you're just like hating life, and it's like, why do I do this? You question everything. Yeah,
That is
sick.
literally why I
100%.
started Snow Functional, is because I was just getting to the point where I was honestly starting to hate snowboarding. I was like, I can't progress. I can't do anything that I want to do. Like, this sucks. Like, I'm supposed to be having fun and I'm not. And I'm the type of person that gets in my head with everything that I do. But like, especially when I get set on like, I want to learn something really bad. Like, I really want to do freestyle snowboarding. And then you just keep trying, and nothing clicks. You're like, screw this. Like, why am I even doing this? And like going to training and like redoing my body mechanics and like things that I learned after watching like some clips and talking to some coaches and stuff, I was like, oh, well, if I fix those things, it might actually help. And obviously it did. So like that was a huge game changer for me.
Yeah, that's sick.
I have that. I would say I don't have that quite as much for snowboarding. Like, I definitely have days that are not my good days, and that it gets frustrating. But like, to be honest, like, I stepped on a snowboard my first day, and it kind of just like, it just happened. Like, I was just like able to like do pretty well,
Yeah.
But like, for me, skating is that way for me, like hardcore, and like that's part of why I actually really like skating, even though I'm ass at it, is because it's so hard for me. It's like the most physically challenging thing I've ever done in my life, Like, for the most part, like athletically, I've always been able to just kind of like pick things up. But skating, I look like a baby deer. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's just like so hard. And so like, being able to ride transition a little bit, like finally, and drop in and really pump through the bowls, like I'm like, okay, but like I still, I've been trying to learn an ollie for 4 years, and like like I can ollie, and I'll hit some gaps and stuff, but it always takes me like 30 minutes to like get even a good jump. I got to be out there and get into it a while before I can like really start ollieing and landing my shove-its and simple tricks like that. But like, yeah, it's just a mental battle for me for skating. For snowboarding, I just fucking, I don't know. I just really love it. And I just have always, if I go into something with full confidence on a snowboard, most of the time I'm gonna like be all right, which is kind of weird, but thankful for it, I guess.
Yeah, right. That's fucking amazing that you can kind of do that, right?
Yeah,
it is
I'm telling you, it's drastically different on a skateboard though. So it's just like, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah. I've always been more of the struggling athlete kind of guy. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
wasn't physically, well, I was spend most of my youth kind of quite overweight, and I had weight battles and stuff like that. So I was never really considered the athletic kid in class. It was only when I did start doing like strength training and all that kind of stuff later on in life to lose weight and all that kind of stuff, and fixing a lot of injuries post like a construction career, that I started realizing that I did have the potential to be athletic. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that was
Yeah.
what's really nice. And that was the realization that like a lot of this stuff, like training and all that kind of stuff, it's not just about the whole jock aesthetic kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it has such a nice carryover into life and how you physically
Hmm.
feel and carry yourself throughout life as well. It's such a nice thing to feel like you're in a strong, capable body and to be able to go and do all these
100%.
different things, you know, to be able to go on a 2 week, you know, snowboarding break, never snowboarded in my life and be able to be at least be physically capable to like learn the skill set because that's what it buys you, like that entry to just be able to like learn the skill as opposed to being handicapped with you can't be on the board for a certain amount of time because your legs give out, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Your back's hurting and all that kind of stuff. So you can't even participate to a certain point, right? And same as skateboarding, I played ice hockey in that as well. Like it made me realize that at least I had the entry point to be able to participate in all these
Right.
things that I want to do or wherever life kind of takes me.
Hmm.
But you know, it's just
GPP,
more of like
baby.
learn the skill. What's that?
I said GPP, baby.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
general
and
physical preparedness, just being ready for
for
anything. You
everything,
know what I
right?
mean? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a nice
No,
thing, and
it is.
that's why I kind of all stem through that, you know what I mean? So it's quite cool when you see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were a part of like the strength and conditioning world for what, like 10, 12 years before you started skateboarding?
Yeah, so it was probably about 10 to 12 years where I was a personal trainer. It originally kind of started through I dropped a lot of weight and then I'd also had a lot of injuries. I was fortunate enough to um, get in contact with some really high level, kind of really good trainers that were able to teach me a lot and, you know, in process fix me. And that kind of stemmed the first 5 years, I would say,
Hmm.
of learning how to fix people going down the injury rehabilitation route and, you know, weight loss and fat loss, and more so weight loss and fat loss as a consequence of fixing someone's health rather than just the
Hmm.
aesthetics of it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then I found ice hockey randomly. And when I found ice hockey, I really started delving into more the sports performance side of things. And that was purely just for me because I was like, I wanted to be able to give myself the best chance of performing on the ice, you know, and
Yeah.
it just became this encapsulating thing. And so then I just started seeking out all the best S&C coaches in the world, who were the best out there doing it, who were the best in ice hockey doing it, and just paying them for their time and mentoring with those guys.
Yeah.
And then I had to finish playing ice hockey because in Australia, go figure, there's not many ice rinks. It's not really conducive to playing ice hockey, right? Because it doesn't get that cold.
Right.
And so the nights are really late. Like we would start playing ice hockey at like 10:30 at night for
Mm.
training and then finish at
Damn.
11:30 p.m. You get home at 12:30, whatever it is, just
Wow.
so wound up from adrenaline. You can't get to sleep till like 3, and then you're up at 6 a.m. to do, you know, 6:30 a.m. clients, PT clients, right? So
Yeah.
Hmm.
it got to a point where it was too hard. And also I have this thing where I just get obsessed with something and I was playing, you know, 4 or 5 times a week. I'd managed to go from never playing ice hockey in my life to playing like Div 1 here in Australia, which is a big deal to me. But like if you're from Canada or something, it's not a big deal. Like Australian ice hockey isn't what it is over there, right? But it was pretty sick for me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And also like I just get unless I'm progressing or unless I'm moving up or I'm doing well, I can get super hard on myself. So I turned ice hockey into something that I hated, even though I
Hmm.
love the mental toll it was taking on me of just like always being pissed off that I wasn't progressing, that I didn't do well in
Hmm.
this game or whatever. Even though I was playing way above my level, it got too much, so I needed to take a break. And that's when I found skating because I did realize that I need something in my life that I can uh, dedicate a lot of mental bandwidth to a certain
Hmm.
extent, you know what I mean? And it needs to be something physical, and that it's almost like figuring out a puzzle with your body. That's what
Hmm.
ice hockey was for me, you know what I mean? Learning how to, you know, ride on your edges, take corners, like speed adjustment. That's why I love snowboarding as well when I found it, because it's just like you're interacting with your body and its capabilities while still trying to figure out, you know, the mental side of things and the puzzle of, you know, how do I lean this way? If I, you know, shift that way, what's going to happen? You know what I mean? And it also has the consequence of eating
Hmm.
shit, right? So
Yeah.
when I found skateboarding in that sense, I was like, yeah, this is going to be it. Uh, again, I got obsessed with it. And what I went to do was to find who are the best out there doing strength and conditioning work so I can learn from them, so that I can start mentoring with them and what are they doing and all that stuff with the skateboarders. And it was like crickets out there. I was like,
Mhm.
fucking no one. And I was like, oh, that's different. Because I'm
Yep.
sure like most markets in the sports, fitness realm are just saturated.
Team
So
sports, yeah.
team sports, like enter a sport and S&C coach, and you'll come up with like just a insane amount of lists of
Yep.
everyone that's trying to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so to not get that, I was like, this is so strange, right?
Mhm.
So I just started doing what I was going to do anyway, and just dissecting footage, the culture and everything like that, and just watching hours and hours of skating to figure out like, you know, what muscles are involved, what are the biomechanics of movements, what are people usually kind of facing and all that kind of stuff. And I was just building programs for myself for that,
Mhm.
because that's what I was going to do anyway, right? It's my combining my two passions together, and that's where I kind of wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Damn.
So yeah, I just started doing that and just watching hours and hours and hours of footage, and then also like what was coming up for me, where was I sore, what were my weak points, how do I bring those up, where were the weaknesses in my knowledge there? Like for a big one for skaters, and what I noticed was like my legs were fine, my lower back was all that stuff like was good to go, and I could, first time started skating, I could skate an hour, 2 hours at a time, right? Because I was physically able, but my
Yeah.
ankles, my feet just felt just absolute trashed, right? And so, uh, who were the best, foot, calf, and ankle sort of guys, and that's how I kind of ran to a guy called David Gray and did a bit of mentoring with him and his programs and stuff to bring up that side of my knowledge.
Mm.
Uh, and then yeah, and then there's a bunch of plyometric work, and as much as I've done plyo work before, I was like, I still want to like who's the best out there, and ran
Yeah.
into Matt Watson. So I
Yep.
just started piecing stuff together, and yeah, it was just that's just what I was gonna do. I get obsessed with things, and I just combine the two worlds, and it's just about learning and creating for me. So that's, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's super
Yeah.
sick. So when you first started doing that for skaters, like not just for yourself, but kind of putting it out there, what was kind of the reaction that you got? Because I'm assuming it's probably similar to the way
Feedback.
that snowboarders are with strength and conditioning, where they're like, that's not part of the culture, like screw that.
Yeah, it was interesting
The
because
best way to get good at skating is skating.
yeah, and I got a lot of that, right? And I still have gotten a lot of that.
Right.
But what was different, I was running 2 pages on Instagram at the time. And contrary to what most people might believe about me, like I'm not a big social media fan, or I wasn't at the time. I'd only
Mhm.
started my other Instagram page purely for my work as a PT, and that's what I was kind of doing at the time. And I was
Mhm.
transitioning out of working in the gym post-COVID. And it was only after running into a lot of guys at the skate park that were just broken and shattered, and that I was just like, man, this stuff it's not a big deal. Like, how do you guys not know how to fix this stuff? Like, there's so much information out there. So
Mhm.
I decided to put some stuff out, and the difference between the 2 pages of like the health and fitness, whatever, that's just saturated in the skate world. When I posted something up the skate world, is like, yeah, I did get that. I did get a bit of backlash, but I the flip side was that I was getting like so much traction in a short period of time, and like 15 20 DMs of people like, oh man, I've been looking for something like this and this is great, and my back shattered and blah, 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 and just like, so as much as you do get that at the initial stages, I was also getting a big response of like, yeah, this is great, which is like so different compared to in the health and fitness space, you're just one of many on their page.
Yep.
So it's just hard to get traction because they're just so desensitized to it
Mhm.
that they just kind of keep scrolling. Whereas here, it was just different in that sense. And that was what was really nice about it, was just feeling like you were making a bit of a difference and people were appreciative of it. So for every guy that was like, bagging it out or whatever, there were like, 20, 30 people that were all for it. So
Damn. Okay.
yeah, it just kind of kept going in that sense, and it kept snowballing like that, right? And it kept growing in, organically. So that was what was so cool about it.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure Chase and I can both agree our realm is still very new as well. It is becoming like a little bit more normal. And I think mobility duo, honestly, kind of pushed a lot of that with having like a big page in the snowboard world, and they're so known by a lot of like pros now and everything. So I think that they really pushed that. Obviously, like people like pro snowboarders and stuff, like people in the Olympics and things like that have been having strength and conditioning coaches for a long time. But even talking to some pros, it was all just kind of like a guess. Like no one had really done strength and conditioning for like board sports or skiing or like things like that. They were all just kind of like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. So when you were kind of coming up with your stuff, how did you kind of create, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but I guess in a more specific realm, how did you take like strength and conditioning principles and you were like, how does this translate to skateboarding? And honestly, a lot of it's really similar to snowboarding as well.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something that, because I don't know if you guys get this, but it's the whole old notion of you need to be able to be this good at, skateboarding, snowboarding to have a voice within about it in terms of strength and conditioning work, right? Like,
Yep.
where's your X? Where are your, I get this a lot, where are your skate clips and blah, 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 right? And it's just like, if you understand base level principles of strength and conditioning and you study your ass off with like anatomy and biomechanics, you can take apart, like it's what we do as trainers or, hopefully good quality trainers is you can take apart movement and that's what you do. And I struggle with this now with skaters where like I watch hours and hours of footage, right? And then I get my skaters that come in and they're dusted and they're like, oh, like what were you doing? And they name the trick. And I'm like, show me the clip because it's so hard for me to understand their language because I have my own and I'm watching clips and I'm like, all right, what's happening at the hip? Like, are they internally, externally rotated? How much flexion they're getting at the knee? What's their dorsiflexion like at their ankle? Are they getting the knee valgus, right? So, like, I've spent my life learning all that stuff so that I can also speak to physios and osteos and that as well, and have a relationship like that with clients, but also so that I can look at movement, dissect movement, and understand, all right, like what's going on there, like what's actually happening. And when you couple that with, good S&C principles, like you can really sit into any sport and take it
Yep.
apart if you give it the time, because it does require time for you to be able to understand what's happening within their sport. What,
Right.
like you can't just kind of have an athlete come in and just think, all right, this is probably what they're doing. Like you got to spend hours and hours watching it and interacting with the community as well. And that's why, like I always say, I'm so thankful for my skaters coming in because I see real time the things that they go through when they come in for sessions so that you can further kind of tailor what they need. And that's kind of the combination of all of those has really allowed me to just fine tune the programming from, and then also even for myself, I think of myself as like the older skater getting back into skating type thing. You know what I mean? Like what would they come into contact with? So between that and, the hours of footage interacting with my skaters, guys online, and what are they coming up with, watching hours of footage, and then even myself participating in skating and, skating, 3 to 4 times a week for hour to back in there, like 3 hour sessions, I can start to really get a picture of what does this community need? What do skaters need? How can I service them and how can I build programs that are actually going to be relevant to them?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
I think it's kind of funny because it's like, do you want your strength and conditioning expert to be an expert at skating? Because they would have to spend a lot more time skating instead of learning about strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
It's like the best coaches in the world aren't also football players at the same time. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They're coaches and that's what they invest and spend their time in, doing. Like you wouldn't go to a doctor who's going to fix you up for your skating injury and be like, yeah, but do you skate? Like,
Yeah. Where's your kick flip? Yeah. That's
yeah,
yeah.
like no,
Yeah.
like no,
Yeah. I'm
I
not going to get
work on
treated by
knees
you.
every single
And
day, bro.
yeah.
Like yeah, like it's
Yeah.
just kind of like it's just funny stuff. But I get it at the same time, that you got to
Yeah.
represent a little bit.
Yeah.
So
And it's, I think that's also important to know that that you do have skin in the game as well, that you
hmm
do the
exactly,
thing as well. And like, you are getting after it and that you are participating in it and it is a
100%.
part of your life, it is like skating is a huge part of my life. Like all my training revolves around it, my eating, my food and all that kind of stuff. And I am still getting out, 3 times a week. I'm healing a tendon injury, so the timing's not as big as what it was before, but when I first started. Actually, when I first started, I was going out like 4 or 5 times a week for 2 to 3 hour sessions,
Damn.
and I just get obsessed with things and it becomes my entire world. So I do
Yeah.
have skin in the game like that. Um, but also, it's the skill set of the lifetime of training and educational courses and all that kind of stuff that I think that's the more important thing of understanding the game. And
100%.
yeah, and
hundred
that's what
percent.
that's what builds it, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I
Some of
think
the
it
best
comes down
players.
to, sorry,
Go ahead,
Chase. I
Kaylee.
think it
Sorry.
comes
No, you're
down to
good.
like how long you want to be able to do the thing too, right? Like obviously you started skating when you were 35, so a lot of people would consider that a lot older. And even I started snowboarding at 18. That's pretty old for starting like a board sport too.
Mm,
And so it's like, okay, I might not be the best. I'm not going to go pro, but if I don't have a healthy body to help me keep going and trying to learn the things I want to do as I'm progressing and simultaneously aging, then eventually it's going to catch up to you. And like I have a lot of friends that are super good and they don't train at all, but then they come to me and they're like, shoot, I hurt my neck yesterday, I hurt my back, like everything hurts. And I'm like, well, you're getting older, like you are a good snowboarder, but like eventually things are going to catch up. So it's important to kind of mesh the two, whether you're super good or just learning, just being able to have a foundation in both places so that
Big
you
time.
can continue.
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I think that transcends like even beyond skateboarding, snowboarding, and that as well. Like we touched on before, it's just, are you in a physically capable body to be able to do and enjoy the things that you like in life, and far
Yep.
Yeah.
beyond the sport and whatever it is that you're doing, are you physically capable? And I think a lot of people walk around with far too much pain because of these endeavors, because they are quite brutal
Hmm.
and there is a toll to be paid, with your body to a certain extent, whether you get dusted snowboarding or skateboarding, whatever it is. But they walk around with a certain level of pain that's just not necessary. You know what I mean? And it's just a couple of simple things that they can do and incorporate into their daily, weekly, monthly, yearly life that will make so much of a difference of them feeling like they've knocked back the
Yeah.
years and they actually are feeling good again. But it's getting them into that and making that barrier of entry a lot easier for them. That's obviously the harder thing to kind of do as well. And selling it to them is probably 90% of it. Like I'm sure you guys interact with it online as well. Is this, how do I sell this to them that, this is the answer to all these fucking pain that
Yeah.
they've been having and all these problems, right? It's a
Well,
hard thing to do.
dude, it's quality of life. You know what I mean? It's just like, what makes you happy? Skating? Okay.
Mm,
Well, do you want to do that when you're 40, when you're 50? Well, if you have to stop doing that when you're 50 because you're like either super unhealthy or you have all this pain or these recurring injuries or whatever it is, like your quality of life drops, your happiness drops. You know what I mean? It's like,
mm,
why would you not want to continue doing that stuff as you get older? Like, I know that's super important for me is like, I'm like, I constantly have to be like moving and doing stuff. Like, even when I was a kid, like, I would just literally like drive my parents absolutely up the wall because I just like, I couldn't sit inside. I didn't watch TV. I didn't play video games. I was just like, I needed to go do something. And like, I know myself. And like, if I turn 50 and I can't do things because my body can't handle it, like I'm gonna be depressed and cranky and not happy, you know? And so like I'm preparing, I'm investing now so I can continue to be happy like later in life, you know? And it's just like it just doesn't, why would you not, you know? Why would you, that doesn't make sense, you know?
yeah.
It's because it's part of culture, and I'm going to
Yep.
assume it's the same way in Australia too. It's culture that people hit 30 and they're like, "Oh, I'm 30, my back's thrown out. Oh, I'm 35, my ankles hurt. Oh, my
I'm
knees
getting
out." And
too
it's just
old
like
for
a
this.
thing where people accept it. And
Hmm.
it's like, why are you accepting it? Like, why is it the norm that, oh, I'm 30, I'm old now? And it's like, who made that up and why are you believing that? Like, do you actually feel like that, or are you just telling yourself that that's how it is? You're old.
Yep. Yep. Well, and I think
Yeah.
part of just telling yourself that is you're putting it into existence at that point. You know, like you're putting out that frequency. It's bound to happen, you know?
Yeah, I think I don't know about snowboarding, but at least I know with skateboarding, a part of that comes with they don't actually understand or know what a lot of this stuff is, and the misconception is that training is a jock practice that's only for
Mm-hmm.
aesthetics and building big. And that's another thing that
That is so true.
I have to be respectful of it as well. I can sit here and say that's stupid and whatever, but like they just haven't had the education. And to be fair, I heard I heard Tony, I think it was Tony Hawk talking about this a while ago, and he really gave me perspective on it, where he was talking about when he was younger and he was a skater that he had to hide his skateboard in the bushes at school because if he walked around with it, he would get bullied, he'd get harassed. And it was usually by those guys who were training and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and I'm not saying him in general, but like imagine just anyone going through that at high school. It's something that you kind
Yeah.
of like to do, and you have got to be like fearful of it because these particular group are ragging shit on you. They're making your life impossible, right? So your only safety and haven is to do this thing because outside of that, you're getting bullied, right? So
Yeah.
then like you're going to be less receptive to someone telling you that this stuff can help you, and you are going to carry a chip on your shoulder in terms of doing it because you associated to that. So part of the thing that I wanted to do was just like I want to educate people, but going back to what you're saying before in terms of copying flack, I've never really chirped back at anyone because of that. Because anytime someone chirps up about that and gets really hateful, and I've gotten some really bad comments as well, I'm just like, man, you don't know what that person's been through to be carrying that
Yeah.
sort of animosity. All right. So just don't interact, right? Like it's just keep putting the positive side of things out there,
Yeah.
and hopefully it'll start to change because a lot of them, they just don't have the education that what this stuff actually is and how the training looks and what the modalities are like and
Yeah.
the investment that people make in their lifetime to be able to learn this stuff and bring, you know, scientific methods and stuff that's true, like tried, true, and tested and the lifetime pursuit in that sense to be able to make this a thing. It's like it's not just like brain dead, throwing shit at the wall
Yeah.
and hoping it sticks with training and hoping they're going to get a result. Like these, like people have just dedicated their entire life to understanding all of this and, you know, making it their crafts. And it's just, they just need the education around the fact that these people are out there and these methods are out there and it's different to what they've known.
Yeah.
But it's hard because they do have that emotional baggage around it sometimes. And it has kind of set the culture for a long time. And it's
Mhm.
bled over to the younger generation as well, you know. But I don't know how it is in snowboarding as well, that a lot of the top guys now are doing it. They're just not very vocal about it. Some
Yep.
are, right? And there's been, like, I don't want to say it's a sole reason as to why we're seeing it, but it fucking makes a lot of sense that before a skateboarder was considered a senior or a veteran at 20 to 25 because they knew by 25 to 27 they were done and dusted,
You
right? The
drop. Yeah.
accumulation, yeah, their body and the toll that skating's taken on their body, it was like they were done. And now we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing guys 30, 35, even closer to 40 still compete or still like performing at the top end.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys are known for having started, you know, looking after their bodies. And even if they're not as vocal about it online or whatever, you don't have to pull the thread very like hard to then hear about times where they've talked about it. So if
Yeah.
they're
Mhm.
doing it, they're just not vocal about it because of the stigma around it, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's something that's really changing, and I think it's just going to take time. Yeah, maybe you guys, I don't know how is it over in snowboarding?
The exact
Same
same.
way. Yeah. Same
Yeah,
exact same exact way, I would say. I
yeah,
think I think what's cool is like I have a couple pro riders that I've been working with and you know, they're all like aware, you know, but they're also like at the same time they're quiet about it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
they're kind of like, oh, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to like put it out there, but I want to do it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And so I
yeah,
100% think, you know, that's a stigma, you know, because of course they're sitting there looking at the next guy being like, I want to be like him, or I want to be just as good as that guy, or I can't land this or do that, you know, and like,
Yeah.
so they're doing something about it, but like they don't want people to think, you know, exactly like what you said.
yeah,
It's the stigma, you know, it's like the I don't give a shit and I'm still a gangster on the skateboard and I'm
mm,
gonna be a gangster. I don't need any of this extra shit. You know what I mean? And like
yeah,
yeah, like if you can do that, that's sick. You great, good for you. You know what I mean? But not everybody can do that. You know, same with football. You know, like I remember when I was playing college football, I was like, I love the weight room. Like that was like something I loved to do. It was like something I was good at. You know, but
yeah,
there's guys on the field that would dust me. You know what I mean? They're outrunning me because I was fast, but I wasn't like demon speed. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
these guys are looking at me in the weight room like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care that you can squat that much. I don't care that we're in here. I'm not going to try hard in here. It's about being out on the field. So it's like it's everywhere really when you really break it down. It's just like a lot much more of like a mainstream thing in football. You know what I mean? Or in basketball or whatever team sport. And then that's like kind of like one of the questions I had was like, do you think like the industry is going to move more towards like mainstreaming, like strength and conditioning for not only for skating, but like snowboarding, surfing, all these other board sports to the point where like maybe 50 years from now, we're going to have like facilities that literally focus primarily on board sport athletes or this or that. And I know there's them around, but it's not like you go into every town on the planet and there's some sort of performance facility or workout place where there's some guy running some sessions for football or basketball or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a really interesting thing to do, thing that I've noticed as well with all us, because football, I would say, is such a great example of the effect that strength and conditioning can have, right? But it's not just in football. Like you look at the NBA, look at ice hockey, over here, rugby. Like go back and look at the footage back in the 80s, maybe even 90s. Have a look at the physicality of the players. Have a
Oh
look
yeah.
at their speed. Have a look at the way the game was played, right? And it was still kind of compared to today, it still feels like an amateur level, or like, you know what I mean, or
Yeah.
people that would be playing amateur level now. And I firmly believe that one of the biggest things that changed is, you know, the introduction of strength and conditioning to those athletes, right? And you see them all now, and they're fucking jacked, but they can still move, they can still
Oh
sprint,
yeah.
they're still agile, right? So it just changes the game. And when it changes the game like that, it also elevates the game. And when it elevates the game, you get more eyeballs on it because it's so much more interesting, so much more faster, so much more of a spectacle, right? And then that's also when you get more money kind of getting infused into it, like as well, right? So it's kind of a trickle effect. And I think that's going to start to happen with skating and board sports in general as well, where these guys are going to continue to elevate the game, and it's going to be, it sounds bad to say, but it's going to be a result of the fact that they're more physically capable,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they're not retiring at 20 to 25, 28. In fact, that's when they're getting the most peak out of their
Yep.
years, right? And so in that sense, uh, it's just going to continue to just push push the board, to insert the board sport. And when that happens, everyone's going to start realizing it, and it's going to be a beautiful change and a welcome change. And I think that's when things, people are going to start investing more time into it. And when that happens, the demand goes up, and that's when you might get these, facilities and stuff like that opening
Yeah.
up, and more quality coaching coming
That's
about,
when
right?
that's when you're gonna write your book about everything you've done for skateboard strength and conditioning, right?
Yeah, I'm not a very good writer. Like if my wife, I'm very thankful for her. She was an English teacher. So she does a lot of my editing, and if you
There
ever
you
see the
go.
first draft copies, it's a team effort. So I'm very thankful for
Nice.
her.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to kind of get your take on like tips you would give for skateboarders specifically, but honestly, I've watched a lot of your content, and a lot of what you do is very, very similar to what I would do for a snowboarder. And
Mm.
so what would be like some just typical tips you would give to a skateboarder slash snowboarder if they're looking to improve their performance, their mobility, like things like that, and they're like, I'm in pain and I want to get better? Like what would be like a very baseline thing you would tell someone?
I would say to invest in a good quality program, because one of the things I see a lot of skaters do is, and a lot of people on the internet in general, is they will pick and choose random exercises from Instagram and social media, right? And there's a process, like that is kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a process to this, and an understanding of that uh, is going to be so beneficial to you in terms of getting the best result. You know, like there's an order of operations in terms of the way you do things to get the best result, you know? And it's, if you're kind of just picking stuff randomly, like from everywhere, you're going to get a random result, and there's a good chance that it won't work. And you're like, oh, this stuff doesn't work, you know?
Yeah.
So take the
Then you get a
time
bad
to,
taste in your mouth, and you're like,
yeah,
"Eh,
so
turn it off."
take
Yeah.
the time to invest in it, from someone that understands, you know, proper programming, periodization, and all that kind of stuff, so that you can get the best result, you know. And still, like, I'll write a program for someone, and they're like, they don't really, unless you tell them, or when you see a programming done by a good quality coach, like, they have no idea the amount of thought that's gone into it, right? And that
Yeah.
every exercise has its place, the order of operation has its
Yep.
place, you know, the
Mhm.
time, the tempo, the rest period, like everything has its place. And
Yep.
it's not just a random, I'm just going to throw all this stuff together because these are like good hip exercises or good ankle exercises.
Mhm.
So I say that would speed up your results a lot. The only other tip I'd say with people is just to just go slow, because that's the other thing that I notice most people do is they just, when they finally decide to go in it, they try and go too hard at a lot of these things, and they just blow themselves out way too quickly, whether it be, especially with the strength training program,
Yep.
they end up too sore and then they don't come back. And it's like,
Or yeah, it takes away from their ability to ride. And again, bad taste in the
exactly.
mouth, and you're like, "Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know," you know.
Yeah.
So
I
no,
get
I
too
agree.
sore. Yeah. I get too sore with this. And so I can't skate, I can't snowboard.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, don't take the same mindset into the off-board training realm that you do on board. Like, you go and you sand on your board, but in the training realm, just look to do minimal effective dose. Look to get in
Yep.
there and feel good after your session, and then feel good the next day, you know, and the
Right.
accumulation of being able to do more sessions in a week, month, year over time, you look back and you would have gained a lot, but
Right.
you wouldn't have gone to that point where you feel like it's really hard. And I think that will allow you to build a good relationship with it and allow you to continue to do it, rather than just going full send first session
Yep.
and like then just blowing yourself out.
Yeah.
Dude, something I always tell, whether it's athletes or anybody that I'm working with, is like, for example, like, like my goal is not to kill you every time you come in here. And that shouldn't be your goal on your own either. Because
Yeah.
there's a couple reasons for that. Like, obvious, like other than the obvious ones, but like, like if you're doing, like, let's just say an 8-week program, and we go through our first 4 weeks, right? Like, I want to build you, depending on what type of, like, like if you're doing wave loading, it could be a little different, but like, I want to build you up to that like fourth week where we're going to go hard. It's just like the same thing as like, like if you had like finals, or like job interviews, or like stuff for your job. Like, if you go hard week one, like you have a ton of shit to do week one, and then a ton of shit to do week two, and then a ton of shit to do week three, and then week four is our most important week, where you got to present or do whatever it is. You're going to be burnt out by week four, which is the whole reason we did the first 3 weeks, was to prepare you for that week four. And it's the same
Mm.
thing with training. Like if you kill yourself week 1, 2, and 3, week 4, when I want you to hit your like heaviest weight, or your most volume, or your most explosive thing, you're going to be done, and you're not going to be able to do that. And so like, I always tell them that's how we kind of like moderate our intensity. And so like, you're right. Like, you might not feel like that was like the craziest, hardest session ever. And that's great, because I don't want you to feel that way, because we're preparing for week 4, when we are going to really test you and kick your butt a little bit, and then that's where we see that big progression. And that's where you're like, oh, okay. And then you're amped for week 4 instead of being cashed for week 4, and that's obviously just like a small example, but, it's about, again, fucking progressive overload, periodization 101, and like, I know they don't, probably listeners don't know a whole lot about that, but again, progressive overload, it's progressive. We don't want
Mm.
you to max out week 1, like, that's not the point. I don't even know if I want you to max out for the first 8 weeks, and so it just really depends on like your level and everything like that. But yeah, like, take it easy, man, take it
Yeah.
easy, work up to a point where you're like, okay, I'm ready to go this week. Listen to your body, so
Yeah. Don't send.
I think that's like the difference between a performance training program and like a typical strength and conditioning program, or like
100%.
bodybuilding, or like what most people would think of when
Yes.
they hear training. And I think like that's where the largest disconnect is, whether you're a skateboarder, snowboarder, or like you do a traditional sport where like strength and conditioning is very normalized. most of the time, if you're not in that realm and you're just like a general population person that's like has a couple hobbies, you would think, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym. And then, and I mean, I used to be like this before I was focusing any training on snowboarding, was like, I want every workout to be hard and I want to like
Hmm.
constantly lift as much weight as I can. And like, I'm trying to build muscle and build my body. And it's like, I don't have any specific goal outside of this other than how heavy can I lift? How much
Yep.
like muscle can I build? And that's very, very different than a performance training program that's built by someone that's trying to get you to a specific goal outside of the gym, which is where like the biggest disconnect I see from people is they're like,
Yep.
oh, well, I can't lift because I get DOMs or because I don't know, whatever it may be. And it's like, well, that's very different than what the like end goal here is. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. Maybe you guys can also touch on
No,
this.
no,
No, no,
you're
it's fine.
100% right, dude. Yeah. And we're not all
Mm.
taking steroids, so we can't just go hard as hell every single day, and still get adaptations. Like we're human beings without 500 milligrams of extra testosterone in us, and that makes a big difference. So like, no, you're right on. You're spot on, Kaylee.
Yeah, and it is actually something I've had to change and adapt to recently was the fact that I am getting older. As bad as it sounds, like I'd always thought that when I was like younger, and because I was like, oh man, I'm doing everything right. I know S&C work and everything like that. Like all these older guys that keep saying, wait till you get older, wait till you get older. I'm like, oh, that's not gonna be me. And recently, I had to really adjust my volume because I was pulling
Yep.
up too sore for skating and I was getting there, my legs felt like concrete, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this much volume. And I started having to adjust. And then I was so surprised at the volume I had to drop down to because I do have an extensive kind of lifting background where I did lift for 10, 12 years and I was used to a certain amount of volume. Like I was
Yep.
at the gym, from 6 a.m. till like, 8 p.m. every morning for
Yep.
12 years of my life training clients. And I'd train myself, I'd be doing these huge, hour and a half, 2 hour sessions playing ice hockey at night because I was younger, right? And now I did start realizing that like I do need to adjust things, you know what I mean? Because I tried everything. I was like, maybe I need more calories, maybe I need more sleep. Then it was just like, hey, dude, maybe you're just getting a little bit fucking older, all right? How about you
Bro,
just chill
I'm
out and stop training like a 21-year-old, all right?
Dude,
Like it's,
I'm
you know
going
what I
through
mean?
that
Like
right now, Dan. Like right, because I just turned
it,
29, and like
yeah.
I always, and I think that's the strength and conditioning coaches in like we're the exception. Yeah, like
Hmm.
my client can't handle this volume, but like I can
I
handle this
can,
volume. And
yeah.
it's like
And it's
yeah, and it's like no, like dude, I
no,
dropped my volume so hard in like the
yeah,
last two phases of my program, and bro, like my body's feeling great, like it's feeling and I
yeah,
still look the way I want to look. I look better than I
yeah,
looked you know what I mean? So it's just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, you don't need as much as you think you need. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of
yeah,
crazy. Like,
yeah.
but
Uh,
when you're younger, you're like, unless I'm like dragging ass the next day, or unless I'm like after my workout, like walking out, like your legs are fucking shaking everywhere. I'm like, no, not enough. But now I'm
yeah,
like, I can go through and leave some reps in the tank, designated reps in the tank for my
yeah,
like primaries, and then pump it out at the end, with some like more isolation stuff, and like I feel great, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? But like you just no, I'm with you, dude. It's crazy, and
yeah,
I'm like jumping higher, running faster, and doing everything than when I was younger and I was going, balls to the walls every single day.
yeah,
But now I'm like, oh, cool. I don't need to go balls to the walls. I can chill a little bit.
yeah. It's a humbling experience though, and it
It
is
is.
taking the ego out of it as well. It was actually something
Mm-hmm.
that came about, training skaters is in the gym environment or S&C work, you are so accustomed to seeing, anywhere from kind of like 3 sets for most things is kind of the minimum. Usually like 3 to 4 sets, strength training's like five
Yep.
sets. And just realizing how much volume these guys can deal with. And to be honest with you, I've dropped down to like, especially with my skaters, to 2 sets of things.
Bro,
The main lifts is like 2 sets.
100%. Like two
Yeah,
working sets.
two working
Dude,
sets
Yeah.
because
100. Yes.
with skaters, they, I've never met any kind of athlete in the world like this where they are addicted, like they're addicted to crack, to skating, and they
Yep.
are going to skate every single day that they can.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of volume that they're getting in with skating, it's just like you just got to adjust for that in the training and
Yep.
the realization
Yep.
of that, of like how sore they would pull up or the big thing is like I always check on my guys. How'd you pull up today? And like, my legs feel a bit, a bit slow when I went to skate that afternoon. It's like, yeah, go figure, right? You're skating that afternoon.
Right.
And so I just
Right.
kept adjusting and adjusting to them. And that is what I think is so valuable about getting feedback from the people you're
Dude,
working with
100%.
and working with them and doing the damn thing, as well. Because
Yeah.
your education can only get you so far in terms of what you're doing and what needs to be done, scientific based principles, but actually interacting with those sort of athletes and guys that are at the top level, guys that are at the bottom level, everything in between, and just making adjustments for that. And it's just like the little things in the game that make all the difference like that.
100%. And
Dude.
doing your own programs yourself and then going out and snowboarding or skating and seeing like,
Yeah.
how do I feel? Was this good or did that workout kind of
Yep.
suck?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You can tell coaches that have never done their own program because it just looks like you're like, dude,
Bro.
go and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Realize
I
what you're
do my
doing to
own-
people.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
I still do that. Like I had a 3-day week or 3 days in a row out at Steamboat last weekend. And on Friday or on Thursday before I left, I was like, I'm gonna hit my 4th workout. And then on Friday when I got out to Steamboat, I was like, motherfucker. I was like, I'm not
Should've done
I'm
it.
feeling that. Yep. I should
Yeah.
not have done that. But
Yeah.
it's again, it's just like me getting over my own ego and being like, dude, you're a human being, just like
Yeah.
everyone else. You're not some fucking freak. Like just because it's crazy because we know it. Like I know in my head. Like I'm like, I wouldn't ever put anyone else through what I just did.
Mm.
But then I put myself through it. I'm like, what the fuck? Why did you just do that, dude?
Yeah.
Totally. Well, awesome. I think this is kind of it. I think we touched on a lot. All right. Well, thank you, Dan, for coming on and for Chase for co-hosting this. I'm super stoked. If you guys don't already follow Dan, his tag is Skateboard Strength on Instagram and also skateboardstrength.com. I'll have that all linked below. So thank you guys and have a really good rest of your day.
Yeah. Same guys.